what's up guys? My name is Zack and today I am driving a 1986 Dodge Daytona. Up front is a 2.2 liter inline-4 turbo, and down below is a 3-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this Dodge Daytona for two reasons. First of all, I always love driving cars from this era. The 80s and 90s are my favorite era of cars. But the second reason is that I've driven a very nice, very well-kept 1988 Dodge Daytona Pacifica Turbo. That was a great showing of the 80s with its digital gauges and blue paint and really a wonderful car. This isn't. This is a base model. This is a more true showing of what the 80s were more actually like, with poor build quality and beige as far as the eye can see. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. But let's get back to that 2.2 liter turbo under the hood. Well, that's actually very interesting because this car is a base model, but the one and only option it got was the 2.2 turbo. The base model engine is normally the 2.5 liter naturally aspirated, and that was actually new for 1986. Well, whoever spec'd this back in the day wanted no options except for the 2.2 turbo. Like I said, paired to it is a 3-speed automatic. Nothing really too crazy there. I'm not really impressed by it by any means, but it's operating. You know, it's shifting gears, and I guess that's all I can really ask. Last but not least, the Daytona, although it might look like it would be rear-wheel drive, is in fact front-wheel drive because it is shared with the K platform. How does it feel to drive the Dodge Daytona from 1986? Well, it's interesting. It does drive a lot like its K-car siblings, like the LeBaron and vehicles like that, but it does make that nice little turbo whistle, which I adore. And it's sporty. You know, it's a little bit stiffer than those other cars just in terms of suspension, but I wouldn't go out there and be like, oh my gosh, it's so sporty. I just want to take this to the racetrack. I'm okay just taking this to ShopRite and back. Although, you gotta listen to that turbo. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, gone are the digital gauges from the last video, and here we just have physical. So we have our oil pressure and coolant temperature off to the left, speedometer and tachometer in the center, and battery voltage and fuel off to the right. I do like the grid pattern that is found on the gauges. That's very 80s, but very simple and easy to read. On the steering wheel, I don't actually get anything. However, I do get a horn button, and that's it. Off to the left, we do have climate vents as well as the headlight switch, and moving on the door, we just have our mirror adjustments. Down below that, we do have the cranks for the windows. Again, because this is a base, they do have manual windows. Moving into the center, we get a clock as well as our elapsed time chronometer, and we do have boost pressure down below with a wire diagram of the car and our fuel light. This is very 80s. I do love this look, love this feeling, and it's been awesome to see the boost gauge actually go up and down as I drive. Very cool to see that. We do have AC and heat down below, our climate controls, very small, very concise. Dodge and Chrysler as a whole in this era did really small climate controls, which I've always found pretty interesting. We do have an aftermarket radio and pull-out cup holders, so we'll do a big friggin' bottle test, but nothing older than 1988 has ever passed, and the Daytona keeps that legacy alive. We do have an ashtray and cigarette lighter and the shifter for the 3-speed, nothing to write home about there, and our rear defrost in the center. The seats are comfortable, but as you can tell, they haven't held up really well. The fabric is very easily ripped, not only here in 2024, but back in the day in 1986, the fabric didn't hold up very well. They just used cheap fabric that was easy to rip, very low thread count. And so, although these seats, I'm sure, have been through a decent amount, this car only has about 137,000 miles on it. They shouldn't be this ripped, but alas, they are. Speaking of seats, however, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. I am shockingly in the back of the Dodge Daytona. It's not good, but I mean, this was of the era. The RX-7, the FC RX-7, which this was also the first year of the FC RX-7, could be had with back seats. They were terrible. So they got that right. They actually got that part right. You know, over the phone call, they were like, hey, it's got to have terrible back seats. And they're like, okay, check that box. And Dodge certainly checked that box. No good. But, you know, the tan carries on, and there's a fair amount of cigarette burns in this particular one, so I feel like I'm in 1986. Let's hop into the back and talk about the trunk, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, around the back of the Dodge Daytona. Oh, Lord. That is heavy when the struts don't want to help out. But here's the rear area of the Dodge Daytona. Tons and tons of cargo space. Again, very characteristic of the era. The Mark III Supra had tons of hatch space. The Mazda RX-7, tons of hatch space. A few years later, the 3000 GT Mitsubishi, tons of hatch space. So very, very on brand. This just doesn't want to stay up. So there you go. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and it's brown. If it needed to be any more 80s than that, it's brown with a tan interior. It does kind of look like a Z car. It kind of looks like an RX-7. It kind of looks like a 944. It's of that era, and of course the louvers on the back absolutely cement the 1980s look. I love it, love it, love it in a very brown, bastardly way. It just don't get more 80s than this, folks. It really, really don't. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving the Dodge Daytona from 1986? Well, this has been interesting and eye-opening because I've driven the 88 Pacifica Turbo. Now, they do share engines, but the cars couldn't feel more different. I said in that 1988 video about how Dodge and Chrysler were having fun with the K platform, and they were pushing the boundaries and pushing the limits of what was possible at an affordable price. This, although you do get the fun boost gauge, this doesn't feel like they were pushing any limits. They said, oh, what's that over there on the horizon? Oh, that's the limits? Oh, we'll stay over here. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. It's like someone described a Z car over the phone, but didn't give them any specifics. It's a two-door coupe. Okay, cool. It's got to have louvers on the back. Of course, right. We'll jot that down. It has a nice sloping roof line, a little bit longer of a hood, little square headlights. Cool, got that down. Oh, someone's on the other line, gotta go. And that's how Dodge designed this car. They didn't take any note into the fantastic inline six or the Mazda rotary engine, which are beautiful power plants. This is just fine. They didn't jot down which wheel drive it was. They got that wrong. And so while these were relatively cool cars, I can't help but drive around and feel a little bit of imposter syndrome. If a burnout competition starts, I'm gonna have to bow my head and try to slip out the back. But then again, there were so many options in the market that this could kind of be an imposter and still get by. Chrysler was going goo-goo for gaga with all of the money that they were making on the K platform that who cares if this thing flopped? Handful of people bought them, they were neat, and they moved on with their lives. So I don't know. Love it or hate it, here's a Dodge Daytona from 1986 in all of its brown, brown, brown glory. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Carl for letting me borrow his Dodge Daytona for today's video. Carl is absolutely wonderful. We've reviewed so many of his cars here on the channel. This is just another feather in his cap. Carl also has his own YouTube channel where he documents all the strange automobiles that he picks up, and this is just the flavor of the week. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.